Hi, I'm Amy Gamble. Welcome to my channel. Have you ever found yourself in a place where you felt like you were so low that you didn't know how you were going to get out of that spot you were in? For whatever reason, maybe your dreams were shattered, your goals weren't met, you let people down that were around you, or you felt like you did, and most of all, you let yourself down. You fell just short of what you were trying to accomplish and achieve. So when I step back and I think about what my biggest failures have been, I can think of many, 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 many big failures, but there are few big failures in my life that led to pretty tremendous successes. And that's my message to you today. Whatever it is that you're struggling with, or whether you have struggled, take a moment and reflect and know that if you keep on trying and you keep on going, that you can get to that finish line. You can reach your destination. You can, even if it's a stop along the journey, you can get there. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to tell you a story about when I was out of high school going into college. I played basketball at the University of Tennessee for the legendary coach Pat Summitt. At least that was one of my stops in my basketball journey. But nonetheless, it was one of my biggest dreams to go play basketball for Pat Summitt. And this was, of course, many, many years ago. I was on the first USA Today high school basketball All American team. And it was a pretty big deal and pretty prestigious. And I was ranked in the top five one of the top five players in the country. And there wasn't a lot of press like there is in comparison today. But back then, it was a fair amount for girls' sports, and particularly in the area that I grew up. Grew up in a small town in West Virginia, and one of my heroes had played basketball or was playing basketball at the time at the University of Tennessee, and that was Mary Ostrowski, the great Mario from West Virginia. What a tremendous person and what a tremendous basketball player she was. And I wanted to be like Mary and go to the University of Tennessee. And so that's what I set my sights on, and I was able to get to that point and have that opportunity. But once I got there, I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't the only high school All American on the team. There was like the whole team full of All American players, and certainly some college All American players as well. And I didn't understand or have the concept at the time of what it was like to come off the bench and contribute in that kind of a way in the short stints and the few minutes that you get. I was always accustomed to being a starter, to being among the highest scorers, or if not the highest scorer, and leading the team in rebounds and steals and blocks. And just that's the kind of mentality that I had gone there with. And so to not get in games at times and not get a lot of minutes, that was really hard on me. And that was my freshman year. The end of my freshman year, something really traumatic happened. And that was my mother had a mental health crisis, and it was a severe accident. And I was thrust into this world of mental health care back in 1984. And there wasn't a lot of information available. The stigma that exists today, to some degree, was really rampant back then. It was something that you just did not talk about. And so for me, I was just coming out and telling everybody like what happened to my mom, the accident that happened and occurred, and how she ended up on a psych ward or psych in a psychiatric hospital. And then having to deal with the crisis that she went through, and then during that summer helping her to recover and get back on her feet again without a guide, without much information, without a whole lot of support. It was just me trying to do intuitively what I knew best, and that was to try to help my mom as best I could, to show her that I loved her. And eventually, fortunately, she did get better. But then I went back to the University of Tennessee for my sophomore year, and fully expected things to change and be different, and they really weren't a whole lot different. I was still not really sure of the role that I was playing, other than coming off the bench or getting not a lot of time. And today, it'd be no big deal to be in the transfer portal, but back then, it was a big deal. Transfers were like, what's wrong with that player? What's wrong with that, you know, situation? And so what was wrong with me was it wasn't a good fit, and I had mental health stuff in my life that I was dealing with, whether it be my own depression and challenges and low points as a result of feeling like a failure. Uh, and my mom's at the same time, someone who was my number one support system. So I ended up transferring mid-year in 1985, and I went to West Virginia University for a semester. I was supposed to play on their basketball team, but I ended up finding my way to a new sport called team handball. Uh, for those of you who don't know what handball is, it's one of the most popular sports in Europe, I think, to this day. It's like soccer on a gym court, 130-foot long court, goals at each end, six court players and a goalie on each team. And the ball size for the woman is just a little bit smaller than a volleyball. And the object of the game is to throw the ball in and score a goal. So while I'm at West Virginia University, I decide that I want to try out for an Olympic sports festival team for team handball. And I had already made the Olympic sports festival team with the basketball, with USA Basketball for a couple years, my junior and senior year in high school. And so I knew what the sports festival was, and um, I knew what team handball was because I'd seen it played during one of the sports fests. So I got to try out. And the long and the short story to this is that 3.5 years later, from being a transfer, being down and out, not feeling like I didn't know whether or not I could survive much longer, to 3.5 years later, walking into Olympic Stadium as a 1988 Olympic athlete. So, this greatest perceived failure, when people told me that if I changed sports, if I left the University of Tennessee, if I, then fill in the blank, was not gonna make much of myself, or I'd be a failure, or I certainly was never gonna become an Olympian. But see, the thing is that that was what everybody else thought. What I thought at the time was, I wasn't sure, honestly, if I was going to be able to make it. I mean, I was just doing one foot in front of the other. What do I have to do today? Can I make it to class? Can I get out of bed? Can I just do the best I can until things gradually got better? And so that's my message. It's like, you know, we want things to all work out, and we want it to be a straight linear pathway from A to Z. You have a dream, you set the goals, you have these achievable wins along the way, and 1 + 2 = 3, and there you have it, voila. But that's not how life works. Life is about twists and turns and ups and downs, and things that you never expect get like dropped on you from, out of the sky. And if by chance you're dealing with mental health on top of it, which I would argue that most people do deal with some type of mental health challenge at some point in their life, even if they don't want to admit it. Because everyone is going to experience grief. Everyone's going to have a failure to some degree, whether that's a job loss, a lack of getting a promotion, some kind of accident in the family. you name it. You name the thing that can happen unexpectedly, an illness, and it goes in twists and turns, and we're not bystanders at life. We're interconnected with each other. And when somebody in our circle goes down, it affects us, whether that's us directly or whether it's indirectly, because someone we love, we care about, they're not doing so great. And we might have to help them. And we might have to put all of our stuff aside so that we can focus on them for that moment. So the whole point of it is that if you find yourself in a place where you feel like your dreams are just not going to happen, the thing is if you step back, and you may have to go one day at a time, one step at a time for a little while with your head down just to get by. But when you can start picking up your head a little bit and start considering possibilities, you'll be surprised that how amazing that thoughts will come into your head, and you'll put a little bit of this together, a little bit of that together, just like I did with, finding my way on a different pathway to get to the Olympics versus the linear pathway that I wanted to go on. So, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I look forward to connecting with you. Take care, everyone.